Social media looks harmless from your phone screen, but behind the likes and shares lie stories that will chill you to the bone. In this video, we're uncovering 6 of the most horrifying deaths caused by social media challenges, and every single one ended the same devastating way. It was March 9th, 2013, in the mostly empty parking lot behind a public high school in Danville, Illinois. A Saturday afternoon so still and gray, the only movement was the distant sway of leafless trees and the shaky focus of a smartphone camera. The cold, damp air hung low over the asphalt, carrying with it the sharp bite of early spring that irritated exposed airways. Jacob Lee McDewitt, 15, was a high school sophomore with a reputation for pushing limits and provoking chaos. Skipping class was routine, minor thefts in the hallways went unpunished, and he frequently egged on younger students for laughs. His grades were mediocre at best, and he had no interest in structured activities, preferring instead to spend afternoons with a tight-knit crew of troublemakers who filmed stunts and pranks for social media. The Cinnamon Challenge had reached their school as a viral dare. Swallow a spoonful of dry ground cinnamon in 60 seconds without water. To Jacob, the point wasn't the challenge itself. It was the attention, the chance to provoke gagging and chaos, and to post a clip that would draw laughs at the expense of whoever tried and failed. The substance's ultra-fine hydrophobic powder made it nearly impossible to swallow, irritating the throat and lungs. But that danger only fueled his thrill-seeking. Unbeknownst to them, Jacob had an undiagnosed history of reactive airway sensitivity, a fact he'd never shared and barely recognized himself. The air was cold and damp, a known trigger for bronchial irritation and airway reactivity. His friends, hyped on the performative aspect, urged him to go bigger for the video, suggesting a heaping spoonful and a dramatic, forced inhalation for effect. Jacob dumped the overflowing spoon into his mouth. On cue, he took a sharp, involuntary gasp to suppress a laugh. The cinnamon did not go down. It atomized. A plume of fine powder was sucked directly into his trachea. His body reacted before his mind could. A violent, spastic cough erupted, but instead of clearing the airway, it forced the moisture-seeking powder deeper, triggering immediate bronchospasm and chemical irritation throughout the lower airways. His friend's laughter, recorded on the phone, ceased when his coughing turned wet and desperate, with no effective air intake between fits. He clutched his throat, his eyes wide with a primal understanding. The inhaled particles provoked rapid swelling of the bronchial walls and severe mucus production, sharply narrowing the passages needed for airflow. Oxygen exchange became critically impaired as inflammation spread through the lungs, compounding the obstruction. He staggered, his lips and fingernails taking on a dusky blue hue. His knees buckled and he collapsed onto the cold asphalt, his chest heaving in weak, ineffective respiratory efforts. One friend, frozen, dropped the phone. The camera captured the grainy image of Jacob's still form and the sound of another boy screaming into his cell phone for an ambulance at 2:07 p.m. Help arrived by 2:14. Paramedics found Jacob unresponsive and pulseless, his collapse progressing from respiratory failure into cardiac arrest due to prolonged hypoxia. Despite advanced airway management and resuscitative efforts, he could not be revived. The coroner's report, in layman's terms, listed the cause of death as acute respiratory failure due to powder aspiration, with severe bronchospasm and inflammatory lung injury. The inhaled cinnamon caused acute aspiration pneumonitis and non-cardiogenic pulmonary edema, effectively preventing oxygenation despite an unobstructed upper airway. There was no external trauma. The local school district later implemented a mandatory digital literacy and health program focusing on viral risk. Jacob's parents used his college fund to start a community outreach initiative, distributing pamphlets in pediatricians' offices about the physical dangers of social media dares. Their quiet son now a statistic in a new category of preventable death. It was August 12th, 2018, on a quiet suburban street in Columbus, Ohio. A slow-moving car in the middle of the street held a teenage girl poised to step into an uncontrolled experiment of balance, speed, and peer expectation. Emily Marta Villanueva, 16, was a high school junior with a quiet demeanor, loved for her persistence in dance and commitment to schoolwork. She spent hours practicing choreography in her driveway, carefully replicating moves she saw on social media. Though she had skill and timing, She had no formal training in stunt safety, vehicle interaction, or risk management. Her motivation came from peer recognition and a desire to capture the perfect shot for an online trend, reinforced by casual encouragement from friends who filmed and cheered her attempts. She wore worn-soled sneakers, a loose hoodie that limited arm extension slightly, and a distracted driver behind the wheel, a 17-year-old family friend, inexperienced with manual transmission. Already focusing on phone placement for filming, Emily understood basic safety for dance surfaces, but not how vehicle speed, uneven asphalt, and personal balance could compound unexpectedly. The street appeared flat, lightly trafficked, and clear, but minor potholes, driveway lips, and curb edges created subtle hazards. The specific challenge that day was performing the Kiki challenge, a viral stunt requiring stepping out of a moving car to dance alongside it. The car moved slowly, roughly 12 miles per hour, but the plan ignored environmental variables. An uneven street, potential oncoming traffic, and distraction from filming. Warnings from Emily's older brother were dismissed. Supervision by adults was absent. The group reinforced a false sense of security, emphasizing low speed and isolated location, while neither the driver nor Emily rehearsed contingency plans for a misstep. As Emily stepped out, she attempted a spin toward the street, the heel of her left sneaker catching a shallow pothole. Her body rotated unexpectedly, arms flailing to maintain balance. The car drifted slightly, and simultaneously, a second vehicle, a sedan approaching from the opposite direction at roughly 25 miles per hour, entered the collision path, creating a combined velocity scenario that magnified the impact force. She stumbled sideways, falling directly into the sedan's path. Witnesses later reported seeing her torso struck, body lifting briefly onto the hood before sliding across the windshield and landing on the pavement. The force twisted her body unnaturally, producing multiple fractures and internal injuries consistent with the secondary collision velocity. Bystanders rushed to her side immediately. The sedan had stopped and the driver exited in shock. Emily was unresponsive, blood pooling on the asphalt. Her friend, who had called 911, remained on the phone with the dispatcher, providing location and a brief description of her condition. Paramedics arrived 7 minutes later, quickly assessing her injuries. Severe blunt force trauma to the chest and head, extensive internal hemorrhage, and deep lacerations along her arms and torso. She was stabilized on a backboard, cervical collar in place, and oxygen administered, then loaded into the ambulance. At the hospital, the trauma team worked urgently to manage her injuries, performing imaging and attempting to control internal bleeding. Despite rapid intervention, her injuries were catastrophic. She suffered multiple fractured ribs and sternum, pelvic fractures with disrupted blood vessels, and severe traumatic brain injury. Deep abrasions from scraping against the asphalt compounded her condition. After approximately 45 minutes of intensive care, Emily succumbed to her injuries. The post-mortem report confirmed the cause of death as blunt force trauma leading to rapid hemorrhagic shock. Her parents installed street cameras and pursued legal action against the driver, though liability remained disputed because of the low speed of the initial vehicle. Friends who encouraged her suffered lasting trauma, some withdrawing from social media completely. It was May 17th, 2013, inside a brightly lit local supermarket in Manchester, England. During the Friday evening rush, the air thick with the smell of baked bread and floor cleaner, Jordan Witwicky, 17, was a high school student obsessed with documenting stunts and pranks for his social media followers. Outgoing and daring, he often sought validation online, performing increasingly risky acts to earn likes and shares. Friends encouraged him, hyping up the spectacle and cheering at each near miss, creating constant pressure to escalate his pranks. The supermarket aisle was lined with polished linoleum tiles, fluorescent lights, and crowded metal trolleys. Jordan pushed a shopping basket with one hand, balancing precariously while filming on his phone with the other. The floor's surface was highly effective for cleaning, but unforgivingly hard and slippery when wet. Earlier that evening, Jordan and a friend decided to film a gallon smash stunt for online views. The viral challenge involved throwing a 2-liter bottle of milk to smash on the floor while pretending to slip. They had done smaller stunts before, But this one was far more dangerous due to the store's peak hour crowd and the unforgiving physics of a heavy liquid on hard tile. Jordan hefted the bottle and, signaling to his friend, threw it underhand across the aisle. It struck the ground seam first, bursting open with a wet explosion and sending milk spreading rapidly across the tiles. He immediately performed an exaggerated slip, laughing into the camera. The slick patch extended farther than anticipated. Jordan, trying to step back to film a reaction shot from a different angle, lost traction in the spreading puddle. His feet skidded uncontrollably, sending him into a twisting, off-balance stumble. He collided first with the edge of a metal shopping rack, jarring his shoulder and forearm, then bounced off a low display of canned goods, scattering them across the floor. His arms flailed wildly, grasping for support that wasn't there. Tiles scraped against his palms as he tried to regain footing. With a sickening inevitability, his back and shoulders hit the floor first, the wet surface offering no cushioning. The impact forced his head violently against the hard tile in multiple points: temples, back of the skull, and jaw, producing a dull, sickening echo through the aisle. His body slid briefly along the floor, colliding with a metal trolley before coming to a final, crumpled rest. Shoppers froze, some backing away in horror. A nearby mother, seeing him collapse, dropped her own groceries and immediately called emergency services. The friend, still holding the camera, scrambled to his side, trying to help but slipping again in the milk. He shouted for assistance, waving to other bystanders to come forward. Paramedics arrived within 9 minutes. Jordan was unconscious, breathing irregularly, and showing severe signs of trauma. Advanced resuscitation efforts were initiated immediately, but the combination of blunt force head injuries, multiple contusions, and rapid blood loss made recovery impossible. He was pronounced dead at the scene. The coroner's report cited an acute subdural hematoma caused by the impact, with death attributed to catastrophic brain trauma from the high-speed fall onto the hard floor. A small gathering of family and close friends later held a private memorial, with his parents emphasizing safety and the dangers of viral challenges. Police investigated the 2 teenagers involved, and the case was handled in youth court. It was December 28, 2018, in a 5th-floor apartment in Barcelona's Gracia district, where the evening was cool enough to leave the balcony door open for air. The city's noise a constant, distant hum. Clara Alonso Ruiz, 23, had recently completed her degree in architecture and was known among peers for her meticulous, almost obsessive attention to spatial relationships and design precision. Her drive was largely self-imposed, fueled by a desire to prove her creativity and fearlessness in both her studies and personal projects. She approached everyday spaces with a designer's eye, often mentally mapping lines, edges, and distances, imagining how objects and people moved through them. Her living space, an L-shaped apartment of roughly 645 square feet, was both familiar and precisely arranged, a blend of functional furniture and open areas, reflecting her careful planning. The balcony, a narrow 13-foot-long extension accessed through a sliding glass door, had always invited her curiosity about balance, edges, and perception. The building dated to the early 1960s and had never undergone a full safety renovation. As a result, the balcony retained its original railing, standing just 30 inches high, with vertical posts spaced 10 to 12 5-inches apart, designed for view rather than modern fall protection. That night, Clara and 3 friends decided to spontaneously mimic the bird box trend, where participants performed tasks blindfolded, inspired by the film of the same name. It was riskier than a typical parlor game because the balcony door was fully open, blending the interior and exterior environments into one continuous acoustic space. Furniture had been shifted earlier for cleaning, moving a rug and an armchair closer to the balcony threshold so that the rug edge slightly intruded on her walking path, subtly corrupting Clara's mental map. Her friends hovered nearby, laughing, filming, and offering playful instructions, occasionally suggesting she trust her steps or teasing about the challenge. One murmured a half-serious concern about safety, but the comment was drowned out by laughter and the casual point of a phone camera. Clara tied the blindfold snugly. For 30 seconds, she navigated perfectly, tracing walls and avoiding tables, guided in part by the tones of her friends' laughter and verbal cues. She turned, believing she was heading back toward the kitchen island. In reality, she was aligned with the open balcony doorway. The city sounds outside and the apartment's interior were indistinguishable, a confusing mix that her friend's encouragement unintentionally reinforced. Her outstretched hands, which had been probing for obstacles, dropped to her sides as she gained confidence. She took 4 quick, normal steps onto the slightly slick balcony tiles, her thighs brushing the railing as her forward momentum carried her center of mass past the top bar. The impact was not a stop, but a tipping point. Her forward momentum, unchecked by probing arms and subtly encouraged by her friend's laughter, converted into a rotational pivot over the rail. Her arms briefly grazed the top bar before losing contact completely. Her hips struck the top bar, her upper body already committed to the arc. There was no scream, only a shocked exhalation. Witnesses in the living room, her friends, saw her silhouette fold at the waist and vanish silently over the edge. The footage captured the empty doorway and the sudden, unified shock on their faces. Her body rotated partially over the railing, then fell 5 stories, landing mostly on her upper back and head, with her right side striking the pavement, producing a heavy thud described by a street witness. A neighbor in the adjacent building saw the fall from her window and called emergency services at 10:07 p.m. Paramedics arrived at 10:14, finding Clara unconscious with signs of severe chest and head trauma. She was pronounced dead at the hospital at 10:52. The medical examiner's report listed the cause of death as massive blunt force trauma. The fall resulted in multiple shattered ribs, some of which punctured her lungs, and a severe fracture at the base of the skull due to head impact on the pavement, causing catastrophic brainstem injury. Clara's family secured the removal of all video content and pursued no public campaign. Her friends were deeply affected, providing statements for emergency responders and later assisting in the private funeral arrangements. It was June 11th, 2020, in the cavernous, graffiti-streaked confines of Berlin's U8 line in Germany, where the air smelled of ozone and damp concrete, and the departing train created a vacuum that pulled at loose clothing. Tobias Dirk-Denwald, 17, was a vocational student training to be an electrician, a practical boy whose real passion was urban skateboarding. His motivation was the raw thrill of conquering man-made terrain and the respect it earned in his subculture. He was part of an informal collective of local skaters and parkour enthusiasts whose online channels glorified illicit feats. In recent weeks, a new social media challenge had gained traction, subway surfing, in which participants ride the roofs of moving trains while filming their stunts for online followers. Tobias, eager to gain likes and recognition, decided to attempt the challenge on the U8 that afternoon. That day, he targeted a deeper, older section of the U8, known for its particularly low and uneven clearance, a detail he'd gleaned from an online forum, but not verified. He ignored a stark, pictogram-based safety warning plastered at the station entrance, featuring a silhouette striking an overhead obstacle. The ethical compromise was swift. It was an off-peak hour with fewer witnesses. He waited for a departing train, sprinted alongside it, and used a rear handrail to haul himself onto the roof as it entered the tunnel. He crouched low, the wind whipping his shirt. The train accelerated to its cruising speed of approximately 31 miles per hour. The tunnel walls began to close in. He stood slowly into a surfer's stance, arms out for balance, the camera on his chest recording. The roar was deafening. He misjudged the gradient of the tunnel's arch. A section ahead, marked by a discolored concrete patch from previous miner strikes, dipped lower. A passenger in the front car, looking out the window, later reported seeing a distorted shadow moving on the roof. Tobias, focused on his balance, did not see the stained concrete rushing toward him. He was still standing upright. Based on scene reconstruction using the footage as evidence, the crown of his head made first contact. There was no time to react. The impact was catastrophic, causing severe cranial fractures and a cervical spine injury that resulted in immediate death. The skull was shattered, and the neck severely compressed. The sound inside the lead car was a sudden, violent crunch, followed by a heavy scraping along the roof. The train shuddered to a halt after the driver engaged the emergency brake manually. The driver, following protocol, radioed control at 3:18 p.m., reporting a suspected strike. First responders, including tunnel maintenance, arrived at 3:31, accessing the scene from an emergency walkway. They found Tobias's body on the roof. Station security footage confirmed his ascent and the train's entry into the tunnel. The coroner's report described injuries consistent with a high-speed, high-mass impact, severe cranial fractures, crushed cervical vertebrae, and catastrophic brainstem destruction. He died instantly. Transit police increased patrols and installed motion-activated warnings in known rooftop hotspots. Tobias's parents arranged a private funeral, attended by close family and a few friends from his school and skateboarding community. They struggled with grief, relying on one another for support, while memorializing his passion for skateboarding with a small tribute at a local skate park. It was November 7th, 2015, in the sterile, tile-floored communal kitchen of a university dormitory in Sao Paulo, Brazil, where the only sounds were the hum of an old refrigerator and the focused breathing of an 18-year-old preparing to eat a pepper. Felipe Rico Montemayor, 18, was a studious first-year biology student. He felt subtle pressure from his close circle of friends, who encouraged various stunts for viral social media content on YouTube and Facebook, framing his quiet demeanor as a perfect setup for dramatic reactions. The incident revolved around a pepper called the Carolina Reaper, which at the time was recognized as the world's hottest. Its heat was intense enough to overwhelm the senses almost instantly, causing sharp pain, burning, and involuntary physical reactions like sweating, a racing heart, and uncontrollable retching. Felipe had a mild, undisclosed history of gastritis, which made him especially susceptible to severe vomiting and irritation after consuming something so fiery. That night, his friends had hyped him up relentlessly, shouting encouragement and talking about how he had to do it all at once to prove his bravery. They wanted him to consume an entire Reaper in one bite without any milk or ice cream to mitigate the effects. No protective measures or recovery plan were discussed. As he placed the pepper in his mouth, the room fell silent for a heartbeat. But the second he chewed and swallowed, his friends erupted in cheers, laughing and egging him on as they saw his first grimace. He chewed twice, forced a swallow, and for 3 seconds, he was still. Then his eyes snapped wide. Intense searing pain radiated from his mouth and likely down his esophagus. His body folded at the waist, and he began dry heaving over the sink, producing only bile. The heaves became full, convulsive retches, each one a violent contraction of his diaphragm and abdominal muscles. Investigation revealed that on the fourth heave, a torrent of stomach acid and partially digested food erupted. Simultaneously, he gasped for air, a reflexive inhalation common during forceful vomiting, aspirating the acidic contents directly into his trachea. The footage showed him stumbling backward, hands clawing at his throat, making wet, gurgling sounds consistent with acute airway contamination. His face, already flushed, turned a mottled purple. A friend yelled his name. Felipe's eyes, locked on the ceiling, lost focus. A final, weaker retch shook him, and a sudden burning tightness spread across his chest as oxygen exchange failed. He collapsed onto the tile. One of his friends recognized the ineffective breathing and called emergency services at 11:14 p.m., while others attempted CPR but could not overcome the obstructed airway. Paramedics arrived at 11:21, finding Felipe in cardiac arrest. Advanced airway management failed. His lungs were flooded with aspirated gastric material, preventing ventilation. The post-mortem report stated death was caused by respiratory failure due to aspiration of gastric contents, leading to cerebral hypoxia. The university enacted a temporary ban on organized food challenges in residence halls. Felipe's parents collaborated with Campus Health to create graphic, clinical pamphlets on capsaicin-induced distress, aspiration pneumonitis, and airway obstruction risks, distributing them during freshman orientation. Thanks for watching. If you like these stories, click here